I have thoughts. The Marvels is now out playing in theaters. Alright, so over the last couple days, The Marvels have been under some tough scrutiny from a lot of the critics. A lot of people are saying it's a lot of fun, it's not as bad as people are saying it is. There's some people. This movie got them angry, and they have quoted it as the worst Marvel movie ever. Do I agree with that? Well, no. But I do see where they're coming from. Let's start off with what works in this movie. And what works in this movie is the Marvels. Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, Monica Rambeau, all of them coming together and meeting each other for the first time works so well because these actresses have fantastic chemistry together. I mean, it's pretty obvious and it almost goes without saying, the glue that really holds this team together is Iman Vellani as Ms. Marvel. I loved Ms. Marvel. I loved that show on Disney+. I've been very excited to see her family and Ms. Marvel come to the big screen, and that did not disappoint. They were some of the best parts of the film by far. But it really is Ms. Marvel and Iman Vellani's just infectious charm and joy of all of them just being there together that's really pulling this team together, and that really brings the best out of Carol and Monica. And I do think that the Marvels being a team, it did benefit the character of Carol Danvers, because since Captain Marvel, we haven't seen much of Carol Danvers, and even in that movie, she didn't really know who she was. She lost her memory, which is also touched upon in this movie, but doesn't go anywhere. We'll talk about that in a second. But since you have a character that doesn't know who she is, how on earth is the audience supposed to attach and know who this character is if she doesn't even know who she is? And because she's with this team, you've got Monica, you've got Ms. Marvel, they pull out her personality, they pull out the best of her, and it makes her a much more likable character. And I liked Captain Marvel in the first Captain Marvel movie, but I liked her a lot more here for sure. And the action in this film was fun. When those characters are all swapping places, when they're using their powers and ending up here, there, and everywhere. It's shot really well. It's very entertaining to watch. It looked great. And it does work as a way to get them all together, but it's also kind of clumsy because it's very inconsistent. And that's something that I found it within this movie a lot, is that there's a lot of inconsistencies. The biggest for me, though, is with the powers, because sometimes it looks like, oh, they're able to control their switching powers. They figured it out. Oh, wait, no, they're still confused as to why it's happening. But I thought they just learned how to. It's very confusing and it's not fleshed out very well. And that goes with a lot of this movie. This is a pretty bare bones movie. And nowhere is that more apparent than with this villain. Now, when it comes to the villain in this movie, nothing about this worked for me. Nothing about her worked at all. Not only because she's a very underdeveloped villain, but because it kind of feels like the movie is taking place in the middle of her story and the characters just kind of interrupt her story, if that makes sense. So in that way, there's a bunch of stuff that's supposed to have happened between this villain and Captain Marvel to give them this kind of relationship and to give them this rivalry, but you never really get the full grasp of it. All you know is that Captain Marvel did something to this villain's planet at one point that really made her mad. So now she's got to go to these other planets and do stuff to them, and the Marvels are trying to stop her. But I never cared. Because a lot of what's going on with this villain is in the background. She was so forgettable. What she was doing was so forgettable. Half the time, I forgot that the Marvels were even trying to stop her from doing this thing. And I think that is the biggest problem with this movie, is all of the execution. Because on paper, when you look at what this movie is doing, when you look at the conflicts that are between Carol and this villain, when you look at the relationship between all the Marvels together and where they're supposed to begin and where they go, on paper, if I read that, I would say this is a great story. This looks really great. But the problem is, it feels like they made bullet points to this story. It felt like they made bullet points to these characters and their relationships and where they would start and where they would end. And then they went, all right, instead of writing a script, let's just go shoot it. Because there's really no journey here with the characters. I swear, like, the second half of Act 2 is missing, because by the time we get to the third act, you feel like, how did characters get here? There's no arc. There's just a straight line of they were once here and now they're just here. And we didn't get to see how they got there. And if you're not watching all of the Disney Plus shows, this movie, and this wasn't a problem for me because I have watched all the Disney Plus shows, so I could follow what they were talking about and what connected to what. But if you haven't watched Ms. Marvel, if you haven't watched WandaVision and seen the start of Ms. Marvel and Monica Rambeau's powers, good luck understanding this movie. Especially Monica Rambeau, because I watched WandaVision. I know how her origin started. I don't understand her powers. Like, I just don't. There's a line that she says in this movie to Carol. She says something along the lines of, I've done a lot today that I've never done before. And I was just like, yeah, you did. I don't know how you're doing any of this. But that's the thing. If you look at this movie, the way that it's structured, the way that it's written, it's poor. Like it's very, very weak. I would go so far to say as it's not well done. Also, really quickly, I feel like I want to talk about this because Marvel released a final trailer for this movie a couple days ago, and if you haven't seen it, I guess that's a spoiler alert for that final trailer, but if you saw that final trailer, you saw they added a voiceover from Thanos, there'll always be someone to carry on my work. They talked about, oh, the multiverse, oh, what's happening, oh, they're coming through. Bullcrap. All of that, bullcrap. Do not believe that final trailer. Nothing, absolutely nothing has to do with Thanos in this movie. And the multiverse angle that's in that final trailer, the multiverse in this movie was so forced. It was so shoehorned in last minute. It felt like it came out of nowhere. It felt like it didn't have a place in this movie. Was not really a fan of how that was interjected into this. And then I want to briefly talk about the post-credit scene without any spoilers, of course. No spoilers for this post-credit scene. I was very fortunate, very happy that I did not get spoiled by this post-credit scene because it was very cool. The post-credit scene for this movie, I enjoyed seeing on screen. I was eating my Mike and Ikes. I dropped them, I admit it. I kind of had a geek out moment. But it also felt a little lackluster and underwhelming, if you know what I'm talking about. I felt like the audience wasn't also as excited for this post-credit scene as I feel like they should have been, especially like for the MCU, for Marvel fans. And it just had this feeling of another thing that they're attempting to do in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that maybe we'll see come to fruition, maybe not. And it also had this feeling of like, in this movie, you're doing this in this movie. And why do I feel like this? Why do I feel like I'm kind of disappointed that this is happening in this movie? And the reason why I felt that way is because this movie overall is the most disposable MCU movie I think they've ever made. I don't feel like I would have missed anything if I had missed this movie. I feel like this movie is just nothing but fluff. It's fun. It's entertaining. I enjoyed watching it while it was on screen. I liked what the Marvels were doing. I liked the chemistry. But make no mistake, when you break this movie down, I honestly think it's kind of poor. Nothing is fleshed out. Everything is glossed over. Elements feel like they're missing. There are story beats that go nowhere. But even with all that said, Marvel, they know how to make an entertaining time at the theater. They know how to have a fun time. I had fun. I liked it. So for that reason, even though it's got a multitude of issues, I will give the Marvels a weak recommend. Do I think that this is the worst movie Marvel has ever put out? For me personally, no, but I do think it's their weakest. And weakest and worst to me are two different things. But maybe that's just me. Comment down below, guys. What did you think of the Marvels? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section. And if you're new here and you haven't heard, we have a goal on this channel. We want to hit 2,500 subscribers before the end of the year. If you like talking movies, if you like talking Marvel, we do that all the time over on this channel. Consider hitting that subscribe button on your way out. As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.